Hi guys, let's get into a little reading. Thank you for your likes, your comments, your subscribes, and to those of you who have booked a personal reading with me, please keep in mind that these are general messages, so do not take them personally. Take the messages that resonate and leave the rest behind. If you would like to book a personal reading with me, you can find the information in the description box below. Let's get into it. What message do you have for the collective at this time? Help me to articulate a clear and concise message in order for it to be received in the way that you want it to best be received. Help me to see what it is I need to see to get the message across as clear as possible. And help me to deliver any messages that you deem worthy in order to serve your highest good, for the highest good of humanity with harm to none. What messages do you have for the collective at this time? What messages do you have for the collective at this time? Comfort. Need some more? Comfort, priestess, and celebration. Give me 1 second to get a card to cover this one. 1 second. Okay, we're back. I just had to get a card to cover the indecency because YouTube will strike the video. Okay, so this almost is giving the energy of, it feels like celebration. It feels like a sense of safety. It feels like a sense of security in knowing you, in knowing self, in knowing the world around you, in knowing your abilities and what you have, and what you can create, right? There's also just a sense of protection around you, right? Around your mind, around your heart, around your spirit, around your family, right? There's a sense of protection that you provide, a sense of safety and security that you provide, that in effect is being provided to you by the universe, right? Because there is a sense of you being able to see yourself, right, outwardly and inwardly, right, in what you have the ability again to create, and also what is connected to you, right? There is such a strong energy around this priestess energy, right? But it feels very quiet. It feels like this isn't loud, it isn't boastful, but it's very powerful, right? Almost as if, like, someone who doesn't say much very often, but when they speak, it almost moves the room. Because what they say is very powerful, is very insightful, is very profound, right? But it's not loud, it's not boastful, it's not arrogant, but there's substance and there's impact. And if you are not already, are learning to become comfortable in this space, because there may have been a time where you may not have used your voice in the way in which you do today. But there's also a sense of reflection that this priestess energy is connected to. This is giving me like very hermit energy, right? Clarify comfort. But it also feels very peaceful. It feels like serendipity. It feels like harmony. And I think that one of the misconceptions about these frequencies is that they're very loud, right? Serenity and harmony are very quiet. They're very slow paced, or I won't say slow paced. I'll say they're very even paced, right? And it's also authentic to just what is happening in that moment, right? There's no need to be in any other space where you are now. And I think that is where you're gaining the clarity and understanding of what it means to be peaceful, what it means to be serendipitous or to experience serendipity, what it means to be harmonious, right? What it means to exude grace and elegance, right? Because those are even paced frequencies. They don't create resistance by holding things up, but they also don't try to rush the process. There's a very even pace of alignment between those that you are, if not already in, you're stepping into. But this feels like you're already here because the energy here feels very even paced. It feels very harmonious. It feels very aligned. It feels very balanced, right? I'm not feeling rushed to get the words out, but I'm also not struggling either to think about what I have to say. So that is kind of like a reflection of how the energy is coming through. Clarify comfort. Clarify comfort. Yeah, there's a certain level of, there's maybe a lesson that you have just learned, but it's a lesson that didn't necessarily rock the boat. It's a lesson that you learned that placed you deeper into this foundation of grace, placed you deeper into this foundation of alignment. Clarify comfort, because you may have gotten too comfortable being too quiet. Look, what did I say? The energy that the reflection card is giving. I literally said it was giving the Hermit, and the Hermit was the first card that came out. You were getting too comfortable being too quiet about the things that you know, about the things that you see, about the things that you perceive. Yeah. The Eight of Cups and the Three of Wands. Give me one more card for the Hermit. Okay, give me two. The Six of Swords and the Ten of Wands. Nine of Wands. Yeah. With the Lovers at the bottom of the deck. A space of acceptance. Again, like, this is giving... Again, you are learning that not just because a challenge presents itself, that doesn't mean it's meant to create a blockage where you are. That doesn't mean that there is something that is trying to stop you from achieving what it is that you are desiring to create, right? Sometimes it's just a challenge. Sometimes it's just to strengthen your skills. Sometimes it's just to deepen your awareness or your consciousness, or sometimes it's just to show you a perspective that you haven't yet encountered, right? Challenges are not always meant to put a block in your path. Sometimes a challenge is meant to make you stronger, to further build you forward, right? And so there may have been a challenge where you were experiencing just being too inside of yourself, right? Reconciling everything internally while the outwardly kind of just figures itself out. But there's a balance happening within the two where you are examining or reviewing or perceiving the shifts that need to happen when challenges present themselves, but also learning how to rectify them outwardly so that it doesn't create a disruption in what it is that you're trying to create, right? Which is, again, the harmony, the serenity, right? The peace, the even flow of life, right? The even flow of creation, right? The openness of opportunity. Because if you do things too inwardly, you don't really reconcile anything outwardly. And if you do anything too outwardly, you risk the chance of ruining everything that is trying to align itself internally. Does that make sense? I'm hoping it's coming through the way that I received the message. It is, there's two worlds that are colliding here, but not in a crash, right? It's the even flow of nature. What I'm picturing is a flowing river or stream. Something that's not necessarily rushing waters, but it's almost like it trickles through the trees in the backyard, right, of an estate, is what I'm picturing. And in that stream, you've got, fish, you've got greenery, you've got rocks, but nothing is competing against one another. It's almost as if the rocks are there to again create like a sense of purity and a cleansing, right? Because the abrasiveness kind of like it creates a different direction for the waters to flow. But the waters are still able to flow evenly, and it doesn't necessarily change the pace. It doesn't restrict the flow of the water. It doesn't block anything that is coming through in its path. It just creates this sense of cleansing, a sense of purity, right? But the rocks themselves are also not moved by the flowing waters of the stream or the river, right? It is very steady in its position, in knowing its power and the purpose that it holds. And that's kind of what this energy is giving, right? That there's a need for steadiness, to not let things that try to knock you out of your alignment get in the way of where you're supposed to be going or serving the purpose that you're meant to be fulfilling, right? But also still maintaining that evidence of freedom, Very strong message coming through. And I'm one very strong message coming through. Because it's almost as if you may be someone who is used to running, right? When there seems to be, and maybe not running in the sense of pace, but sometimes instead of trying to figure out another way, you just completely go into another direction. And sometimes that can take you a distance away from the path in which you're meant to go on, right? And so this energy feels like this may have been a lesson that you have recently learned, are in the moment of learning, or a lesson that may be coming up for you, depending on where you are in your journey. But there's something about knowing how to balance the both and not feel the need to run or automatically need to pack up and go or choose a new direction whenever a challenge faces itself that you feel that you are not worthy or deserving of experiencing, right? Because again, just because a challenge presents itself, that doesn't mean that it's meant to harm you. It doesn't mean that it's meant to make you choose another direction or path. That's where the discernment comes in, where you have to know the difference between a challenge and a redirection. But again, sometimes challenges present themselves just so that you can learn to further deepen the skills that you've already learned. But if you if you choose to turn away from that challenge that presents itself instead of facing it, then you miss the opportunity to build the skill that the challenge was meant to teach you, right? So you, in effect, do yourself a disservice instead of adding to the resources that are available to you. Clarify the priestess. Yeah. The Six of Cups. The Knight of Wands. This is given the energy of knowing that where you are right now, how can I put this into words? Because what I'm experiencing or what I'm seeing or envisioning is, you know, how birds have the ability to feed themselves, right? Or animals in general. Things show up for you when they're meant to, right? You don't always have to over prepare. You don't always have to over plan. You don't always have to look for an out or different avenues in case something doesn't work out, right? Because you don't always have to expect something not to work out, right? Sometimes some things do happen the way that we desire them to, right? Dreams do come true. That's a reality, not a perception. That's another message in itself. But you will always have what you need available to you in the moment in which you need it. Right? And so again, that also is also along the frequency of just existing in that space of serenity. right? In that place of even flow where again, you don't have to chase the next thing. Just know that where you are right now is where you're supposed to be. And what you have in this moment is exactly what you need to be where you are currently, right? You don't need to over prepare in this space of balance because you have the ability to create what it is that you desire in those moments. However, you have the wisdom and the understanding and the knowledge to know that it will appear in the moment in which you're meant to receive it and not a moment before, not a moment later, right? Only when you align yourself to the space in which it exists. Clarify celebration. The Two of Pentacles. Balance. Give me one more. Give me one more. Right. So this is... Give me a second to fill this out. Because it almost feels as if it almost feels as if you've learned a very valuable lesson in dedication. You've learned a very valuable lesson in discipline. You've learned a very valuable lesson in effort, consistency, right? What it means to be intentional and what it means to be diligent, right? But there's also... Give me more on this Five of Cups. Because it almost as if like this is the Two of Wands, a whole new world with the Ace of Swords. That's confirmation of truth, right? So there's a whole new world that you have to learn to let inspire you. You have to learn to find peace in observing, right? Find peace in stillness, right? And but it also is giving me that space of like, just because something is still does not mean that it's not moving in the background. And I think that also was what's causing like a duality. Because maybe that was the lesson that you had to learn. To that just because something doesn't appear to be one way, that doesn't mean that you should take the time to sulk and have that woe is me because something didn't work out the way that you expected it to, right? Part of being free flowing is releasing expectation and allowing things to meet you where you are. And so if you're meeting if something is meeting you where you are, but the reflection doesn't match your perception, then one of the two may be off. And likely it's your perception, not about the reality, but about who you are internally, right? because there's also like a sense of needing to be diligent in consistent learning, right? Consistent effort, not to get stagnant in a place of comfortability of, I know everything, I've learned all the lessons, I'm of a certain age, or I'm of a certain whatever it is that people use to make themselves feel above or more than, right? Could be a title, it could be a position, it could be whatever it may be for whoever, right? There's a necessity in needing to remain the student, even if you are in the position of a teacher. There is a necessity, not a want, but also a desire, right? Because the desire has to be just as balanced as the necessity, right? For you to receive everything that you're meant to get out of it. Or else you'll miss the message, right? If you're doing it just because it's a necessity and not out of desire, you'll completely miss the message. You'll completely miss the lesson. So there has to be an alignment between the two so that you're able to receive the gift, the lesson, the challenge, the message, whatever, in its entirety, in its fullness, that you're meant to receive it, right? Let's pull 4 cards because I feel like this is such a loaded message, and I'm hoping that I'm getting out all that is meant to be received from this, because it feels like so much is wanting to come through. But it's also coming in a way that is very, very, very full, I'll say. One card for the major lesson we can learn regarding this message. One card for what we can create surrounding this message. One card for what we can meditate on as the focus of this message. And one card for the new cycles and habits we can innovate to contribute to our growth and expansion surrounding this message. One card for the major lesson. Simple pleasures, serenity. You never need more than what is available to you in one moment of time. Amen. Transformation, because what you have in that moment will help you to achieve the goal that you are trying to create in the next space, right? Does that make sense? What you have in this current moment will lead you directly or align you directly to the path in which you're trying to create. One card for what you can create surrounding this message. One card for what we can create surrounding this message. Surrender with joy, right? Slow down to relax. This whole message was about slowing down and not rushing things, but also being careful not to create resistance, right? So be mindful of surrender. Create that space of surrender so that you can experience what is, right? All right, let's do one card for what we can meditate on as the focus of this message. Determination. Meditate on, where are you going, right? Are you determined? Are you moving diligently? Are you moving? Speak out. Use your voice. Remember in the beginning, I said you may have been that's the Ace of Swords here. You may have been too comfortable being too quiet. That hermit energy. It's time to come out of that. It's time to be seen. It's time to use that voice. It's time to express those new ideas, right? It's time to put into action those new senses of creativity that you have, right? It's time to put things into action that you may have been holding on to, or speak the lessons that you have learned, right? Share, because I'm seeing birds, right? Birds are messengers, right? There's also a lot of peacocks here, which is giving me the sense of like learning to appreciate the beauty in truth, right? Sometimes truth is sharp, but it doesn't always need to be painful, right? And so learning to accept the beauty in the truth of what is and acknowledging it for just that, right? Nature is a duality. There are very beautiful things and there are very ugly things. Most times it's the ugly things that create the beautiful things, right? It's the storms that create the natural wonders in the world, right? So meditate on where you're being diligent, where you're where the areas in which you're persevering, right? Meditate on where you're being disciplined and where your efforts are going, right? One card for the new cycles and habits we can innovate to contribute to our growth and expansion. Accepting challenges. Energy of love. Accepting challenges with love, not creating a resistance, knowing that just because a challenge presents itself, that doesn't mean that it's meant to block you. Challenges are meant to refine you, right? To make you better, to sharpen you, your knowledge, your skills, right? Your awareness, your consciousness, your depth, right? Your groundedness, right? Challenges are only there to refine you. They're not there to cut you down, right? And so open yourself up to challenging yourself, right? Open yourself up to bettering yourself and embracing this energy with love so that you can exist in that space of freedom, so that you can exist in that space of serenity, harmony, right? And so that you can experience the clarity that you need to reach the destination in which you're trying to achieve, right? But that is the message that I have for you guys. I hope that it resonated. I know that if you made it to the end of this video, you have found something in it that is worthy and valuable to you. Thank you for watching. Bye.